Before you start your car today, there are 5 things you need to know. Not suggestions, not recommendations. Rules. New rules. Rules that took effect in 2026 across Canadian provinces that millions of drivers have never been told about. Rules that carry fines, license suspensions, and in some cases, vehicle seizures for drivers who violate them without ever knowing they existed. And here is the part that makes this video specifically urgent for Canadian seniors. 4 of the 5 rules I am about to show you disproportionately affect drivers over 60. Not because older drivers are worse drivers, not because the roads are more dangerous than they used to be, but because these specific rule changes target behaviors. Vehicle standards and medical disclosure requirements that are far more likely to affect someone who has been driving for 40 years than someone who just got their license last spring. If you are a Canadian senior who drives, if you have a spouse or parent who drives, if you have never sat down and read through what actually changed in Canadian road rules in 2026, this video is for you, because the fine for the first rule alone starts at $2,000. And most of the drivers who will receive that fine this summer have no idea the rule exists. Because by the end of this video, you are going to know 5 things about Canadian roads in 2026 that most drivers do not know. And knowing them could save your license, your vehicle, and thousands of dollars in fines before the end of this summer. Before I continue, one quick thing. These rules are already in effect. Police across multiple provinces have already begun enforcement. The seniors who watch this video today are the ones who know before they get pulled over. The ones who do not watch it are the ones finding out during a traffic stop. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because there are additional changes coming to Canadian road rules before the end of 2026 that will affect senior drivers specifically. Subscribe now so the information reaches you before it costs you money. Then let me show you exactly what changed. Rule number 1. And this is the one that is already generating the largest fines and the most license suspensions among drivers who had no warning it was coming. Distracted driving laws in Canada have been significantly expanded in 2026 to include a category most drivers have never heard of. Passive device presence. Most Canadian drivers already know that holding a phone while driving is illegal. Most know that texting at a wheel is illegal. What most drivers do not know is that in British Columbia, Ontario, Manitoba, and Nova Scotia, new regulations that took effect in January 2026 now make it an offense to have a mobile device in an accessible position while driving, even if you are not touching it, even if it is sitting on the passenger seat, even if it is in the cup holder, even if it is in your jacket pocket, within reach of your driving position. The new standard requires that any mobile device be either stored in a closed compartment, such as a glove box, secured in a properly mounted hands-free holder with no manual interaction, or placed in the back seat or trunk of the vehicle. A device visible on the seat beside you or sitting in the center console is now considered an accessible device under the new provincial regulations and can result in a fine beginning at $2,000 in Ontario and license demerit points that vary by province. For senior drivers who use a phone for navigation, who keep a phone nearby for emergency purposes, or who simply leave their device on the seat, as most Canadians have done for years, this change is invisible until the moment a police officer sees the phone through the window during a traffic stop. The fine is not a warning. It is $2,000 for a first offense in Ontario. 3. Demerit points. And for a senior driver whose insurance premiums are already being reviewed at renewal, 3 demerit points in 2026 can mean a premium increase that runs for years. What you need to do right now, before you drive again, move your phone. Put it in your glove box. Put it in your bag in the back seat. If you use it for navigation, mount it properly in a hands-free holder before you leave your driveway. Do not leave it on the seat. Do not leave it in the cup holder. That habit that felt safe for years is now a $2,000 fine in multiple provinces. Rule number 2. This one affects a specific category of Canadian driver more than any other group: seniors who drive older vehicles that were last inspected several years ago. Multiple provinces, including Ontario and Nova Scotia, have updated their vehicle safety standards for 2026 to include enhanced requirements around tire condition, braking systems, and lighting standards. What changed is not the standards themselves, but the enforcement approach. Provincial police and municipal officers in 2026 have been given clearer authority and direction to conduct roadside vehicle condition assessments during routine traffic stops. A vehicle that passes a traditional safety inspection but shows visible tire wear, cracked sidewalls, or tread approaching the minimum legal depth can now be flagged for an immediate roadside order, requiring the vehicle to be driven directly to a certified inspection station. For senior drivers on fixed incomes who have been delaying tire replacement or brake service because of cost, this change means what was previously a private decision about when to address maintenance is now potentially a roadside enforcement issue. The connection to senior finances is direct. A roadside order to attend an inspection station can result in a requirement to replace tires, brakes, or lighting components before the vehicle is cleared to return to the road. For a senior whose monthly income is CPP and OAS, an unexpected requirement to replace 4 tires at $800 to $1,200 is not a manageable surprise. It is a financial emergency. What you need to do: check your tires this week. Look at the tread depth. Look at the sidewalls for cracking or bulging. If your tires are more than 6 years old, regardless of visible condition, have them inspected by a certified mechanic. Rubber degrades over time even without visible wear. And check your brake lights and headlights before every trip. A burned-out brake light that you cannot see from the driver's seat is now a more significant issue than it was a year ago. Rule number 3. This is the one most Canadian seniors have never heard discussed in any context. And it is the one with the most serious long-term consequences for drivers over 65. In 2026, Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta have all updated their medical fitness to drive reporting requirements for license renewal. The changes affect drivers in 2 ways. First, the age at which enhanced medical review is triggered during license renewal has been lowered in these provinces. In Ontario, the previous standard triggered enhanced review for drivers renewing at 80. The new standard triggers a medical fitness review at 75 for drivers in specific health categories defined by the province. If your license comes up for renewal at 75 or older in Ontario in 2026, you may be required to complete a medical review that was not required the last time you renewed. If that review reveals a condition that was not previously disclosed to the Ministry of Transportation, you may be required to complete additional testing, install a monitoring device, or restrict your driving before your renewal is approved. Second, and this is the part most people have never been told, the duty to report changes to medical fitness to Drive Canada does not only apply at renewal, it applies continuously. If your doctor diagnoses you with a condition that may affect your ability to drive safely, that condition must be reported to your provincial licensing authority within a defined time period that varies by province. In Ontario, that period is 7 days from the date of diagnosis. In British Columbia, the reporting responsibility falls primarily on the physician, but the patient is also expected to be aware of reporting obligations. Failure to report a relevant medical condition and then being involved in a collision can void your insurance coverage entirely. The conditions most commonly triggering these reporting requirements include new diagnoses of diabetes requiring insulin, sleep apnea that is not being treated, cardiac conditions involving irregular heart rhythm, vision conditions falling below the provincial minimum standard, and certain neurological diagnoses. What you need to do: if you have been diagnosed with any new health condition in the last 2 years and your doctor has not specifically discussed your fitness to drive, raise it at your next appointment. Ask directly whether your diagnosis creates a reporting obligation to your provincial licensing authority. Do not assume the doctor will initiate that conversation automatically. In some provinces, it is a shared responsibility, and the senior driver who does not ask may find out about the obligation only after a collision when the insurance claim is denied. Rule number 4. This one affects every Canadian driver, but it carries specific financial consequences for senior drivers on fixed incomes that younger drivers are less likely to feel as severely. Automated speed enforcement cameras have been significantly expanded across Canadian municipalities in 2026. Ontario alone added over 300 new automated speed enforcement locations between January and June 2026, with the largest concentrations in school zones, community safety zones, and residential areas near seniors' facilities and hospitals. British Columbia expanded its photo radar program to include municipal roads in 32 additional cities. Quebec activated automated enforcement in zones that had previously been camera-free. What changed in 2026 is not just the number of cameras. It is the penalty structure. Multiple provinces updated their automated enforcement penalty framework this year to implement escalating fines for repeat violations captured by camera within a rolling 12-month period. A first camera fine in Ontario for traveling 11 to 20 kilometers above the posted limit in a community safety zone is $150. A second camera violation within 12 months is $300. A third is $500. And unlike officer-issued speeding tickets, automated enforcement fines in most provinces do not carry demerit points, but they do appear on your driving record and are increasingly being considered by insurance companies at renewal. For a senior driver on a fixed income who uses their vehicle primarily for grocery shopping, medical appointments, and visiting family, a series of automated camera fines in a neighborhood they have driven through for 20 years without ever receiving a ticket is a genuinely unexpected financial hit, especially because the camera locations are not always prominently signed in a way that makes their presence obvious before the violation occurs. What you need to do: slow down in residential areas, school zones, and community safety zones. Not because the risk of a ticket has increased, although it has, but because these areas have camera enforcement that is now active in locations that were camera-free 1 year ago. If you drive a regular route through a residential area, drive it once specifically looking for camera signage. The signs are legally required in most provinces, but they are not always large or prominently positioned. Know where the cameras are on the roads you use most frequently before you receive a notice in the mail. And this is the one with the most direct connection to the financial situation of Canadian seniors specifically, because it involves something that most senior drivers have been doing for years, based on advice they received when the rules were different. In 2026, multiple provinces updated the standards governing license renewal for drivers over 65 who have received a medical accommodation on their license. A medical accommodation is a condition placed on your license by the Provincial Licensing Authority following a medical review. Common accommodations include requirements to wear corrective lenses while driving, restrictions on highway driving, restrictions on night driving, or requirements to drive only within a defined geographic area. The update that took effect in 2026 concerns what happens when a driver with a medical accommodation is found to be driving outside the conditions of that accommodation. Under previous enforcement standards, a driver found violating an accommodation condition during a routine traffic stop typically received a warning or a relatively modest fine and was told to address the condition before their next renewal. Under the 2026 updated framework in Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta, driving in violation of a medical accommodation condition is now treated as a license condition violation, carrying immediate license suspension in addition to a fine. An immediate suspension, not a warning, not a requirement to address it at renewal. Your license is suspended at the roadside at the time of the stop. For a senior driver who did not realize their accommodation had a geographic restriction, or who has been wearing single vision glasses while their license requires bifocals, or who has been driving on the highway when their accommodation restricts them to local roads. This change transforms what was previously a paperwork issue into an immediate loss of driving privilege. What you need to do: find your physical license right now and read every condition listed on it. Every line. If your license carries any accommodation or restriction, understand exactly what that restriction means and ensure you are complying with it every time you drive. If you are not certain what a condition on your license means, call your provincial licensing authority and ask them to explain it before your next drive. Do not assume you know what it means based on advice you received years ago when the enforcement standard was different. Now, let me bring all 5 of these together, because there is a financial picture here that is specific to Canadian seniors that most coverage never addresses. A Canadian senior on CPP, OAS, and GIS, whose total monthly income is between $2,000 and $3,000, faces a completely different consequence from a $2,000 fine or an unexpected four-tire replacement than a younger working driver does. For a working driver, a $2,000 fine is painful. For a senior on a fixed pension income, a $2,000 fine is a month of groceries, pharmacy, rent, and utilities combined. It does not fit in the monthly budget. It cannot be absorbed without borrowing or selling something. This is why knowing these 5 rules before you encounter them is not just practical information. It is financial protection. The senior driver who knows about the passive device presence rule before they drive today does not pay a $2,000 fine. The senior driver who checks their tire condition this week does not face a roadside inspection order next month. The senior driver who reads the conditions on their license before their next trip does not lose their driving privilege at a traffic stop. Here is your complete action list before you drive again. Move your phone into your glove box or back seat before you start your engine today. If you use it for navigation, mount it properly in a hands-free holder. Do this before your next trip. Not eventually, before your next trip. Check your tires this week. Look at tread depth and sidewall condition. If your tires are more than 6 years old, regardless of appearance, have them professionally inspected. Check all exterior lights, including brake lights, which you cannot see from the driver's seat. Talk to your doctor at your next appointment about your fitness to drive. Ask specifically whether any of your current health conditions or medications create a reporting obligation to your provincial licensing authority. Raise the question yourself. Do not wait for the doctor to initiate it. Drive the posted speed limit in residential areas, school zones, and community safety zones. These areas now have automated camera enforcement in locations that were camera-free 1 year ago. Know the roads you drive regularly. Was it the medical accommodation enforcement change? Was it the automated camera expansion? Tell me which one you had never heard about. Subscribe, so when the next road rule change affecting Canadian seniors arrives, you find out here before you find out during a traffic stop. You have been driving safely for decades. Make sure 5 rules that changed in 2026 are not the reason that changes. I will see you in the next one.